Good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Harris, and I serve as the Deputy Superintendent for Community Empowerment, Innovation, and Partnerships. It is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's Region 1 Comprehensive Master Plan Town Hall meeting. We are happy that you've joined us for this very important event. Tonight, we will discuss updates to the Comprehensive Master Plan process, as well as updates to ESPLAS 5. We hope that you will be able to be provided with clarity and a renewed sense of partnership with the district. We ask that if you have questions this evening, that you drop them in the chat. And during the question and answer portion of the agenda, we will be sure to lift up your questions for the panelists to respond to. I will now like to invite Superintendent Cheryl Watson Harris to bring you greetings.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Harris. Thank you to all of our leadership team members that are in attendance with us, all of our translators, and members of our facilities and operations teams. And thank you, most importantly, to all of our families that have made this time to be in community with us to discuss these very important topics. First, the Comprehensive Master Plan, or the CMP, and also ESPLAS 5. We thought that that was important to bring you highlights on ESPLAS 5 so that we could take a look back as we planned for our direction moving forward. We already know that there are going to be many questions that you have tonight that we won't get to. We promise we have been capturing all of the questions that have been going into the chats and responding to those that we can answer very quickly by the Friday, some before the Friday, but definitely by the Friday at the end of each week. So we want you to know that we are here. We want to engage and answer as many questions as possible, but we want to also let you know that we will be following up on questions that come afterwards. So again, this evening, we aim to provide you updates on exactly where we are in the CMP process. We all know that we took a pause when we had a lot of concerns to get our ducks in a row and to make sure that we had that we were proceeding in the strongest and most positive way. So we just want to bring clarity to where we are in the process. We want to again give you an update on ESPLAS 5, as well as hear what other outstanding questions that you have that we want to be sure to address. I will also add that this is the last in this series, and we've had a number of Region 1 families and stakeholders join us at almost every of the 7 town halls that we've held thus far. But this is the end in this series. And in a few weeks, you will get an invitation for the next set of town hall meetings that will focus more on our recommendations. So we know that there are lots of questions that you have about the specific recommendations. That's not what we're necessarily going to be discussing tonight. We're discussing where we are in the CMP process and also giving you an update on ESPLAS 5. Based on the last few meetings, I will share that even though Mr. Hans Williams has a wonderful presentation to give you updates and overviews on ESPLAS 5, we know that you're going to still have some questions, and we're going to gather those, and we're going to continue in the spirit of transparency and owning things that haven't gone well as articulating what our vision and our plan is to correct past mistakes and also lead in the most positive and productive way moving forward. Someone asked in an earlier CMP town hall, what was the vision? What was the vision for the comprehensive master plan? And really, probably the most succinct answer to that is to ensure that our scholars are not only given a variety of high quality, innovative academic options, but also are educated in facilities that allow them to thrive. Now, that's a simple answer, and we all know how much work we have to do to address the inequities, and that there was a question about our definition of that as well, but making sure that every community has a great school, that we're able to address overcrowding as well as address underutilized seats, but most importantly, making sure that every child who attends DeKalb County School District has the opportunity and access to a high quality educational experience in a building that's conducive for them to learn and grow and be happy students. So we're ready to move forward. We've talked a lot about some of the past things, and we know there's more work we have to do there, but we're ready to move forward, and we're excited. We're excited about the team we've put in place. We're excited about the lessons learned and where we're going moving forward. And we want everyone to recognize that the fruits of these meetings, for those that have attended every one, or if this is your first one in this series, that the fruits of these meetings will help chart a productive, efficient course for the district for years to come. And that's really what this is all about, making sure we're being extremely thoughtful in what we value and what we want our children to have access to, and that we consider all options as we move forward with the comprehensive master plan. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Region 1 Superintendent, Ms. Melanie Pierce, to give you greetings, and I, along with the rest of the team, will be on for the full town hall to answer any questions that you have moving forward. Ms. Pierce?
So good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Watson-Harris and Ms. Harris. Again, I would just like to welcome you all. Thank you for joining us. I am Melanie Pierce. I'm the Region 1 Superintendent. I support Cross Keys Cluster Schools, Chamblee Cluster Schools, and the Dunwoody Cluster Schools. So I know many of you, we've had numerous interactions. And again, I just want to thank you all. We know this topic is very important. So we welcome your questions. I thank you for tuning in tonight. And then I also thank the district team for taking the time to respond to the many questions and share all of the updates with the region. So I am turning it back over to Ms. Harris at this time. But again, thank you all. And if there are any questions that I can answer, feel free, as you all know, to reach out directly to me at any time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I invite Mr. Richard Boyd, our Interim Chief Operating Officer, and Hans Williams, our Director of Planning, to proceed with the presentation for tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Again, I also want to welcome you to the district's regional comprehensive master plan regional town hall for Region 1. Tonight, we're going to focus on the ESPLAS 5 project and facility improvements, and also provide an update on the CMP. We will not be providing any options tonight. That will come in the near future. I just want you to know that this is the last of 7 presentations that we've done. All 7 of these presentations have been pretty much the same. The one difference is tonight we'll focus on Region 1 projects, and where in the past we focused on the projects that have been either currently ongoing or in the past for the different regions. Our agenda for tonight, first we're going to talk about the ESPLAS and facility improvements. We'll do a ESPLAS overview of what the ESPLAS program is, and then also current projects. And then Mr. Williams will provide a CMP update, a status update, and then a timeline to completion. Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Richard. And just to reiterate what Richard said, tonight we're focusing much more on facility improvements and specifically ESPLAS. And you'll see as we go through this presentation how important ESPLAS is to the future of the district as the CMP wraps up and the recommendations, we begin to implement recommendations. ESPLAS is a very important funding source for how we will achieve the goals of the CMP. So you'll see that's why so much of tonight is focused on ESPLAS and facility improvements. We will be presenting options for the CMP at the next meeting. I know everyone, including myself, is very excited and ready to see what are the recommendations going to be and begin talking about that. But tonight, since we still have a bit longer to wait, we're still working on those. We're going to be focusing on ESPLAS. So as we focus on ESPLAS, it's important to know what does ESPLAS mean? ESPLAS stands for Education Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. That is a 1-penny sales tax on all goods and services sold in DeKalb County. The revenue from this sales tax is used by the school district to fund capital projects and purchases. For DeKalb, that has meant new facilities, classroom additions, major and minor renovations at nearly every school, as well as purchasing new technology and equipment. This penny sales tax generates around $500 million over 5 years. And while this seems like quite a lot, the estimated cost to address all facility needs across the district is over $2 billion. This means that ESPLAS is and will continue to be a necessary funding source for facility improvements in this district. The ESPLAS sales tax is approved by voters every 5 years and so operates on a 5-year funding cycle. We are currently near the end of the 5th such cycle, ESPLAS 5, which began in July of 2017 and ends at the end of June of 2022. This coming November, DeKalb County voters will vote on renewing ESPLAS for the next funding cycle, ESPLAS 6. Over the nearly 25 years ESPLAS has been in place, it has paid for 36 new or replacement schools, 31 building additions or school conversions, over 80 elementary school gymnasium additions, and major and minor renovations and improvements to nearly every school in this district. To show the extent of the impact of ESPLAS, we have listed some of the major improvements that ESPLAS has paid for in each region from ESPLAS 1 till now. I'm going to skip ahead to Region 1 for this meeting tonight. However, I encourage anyone interested to go on the CMP webpage and download this presentation, or look at the recordings of the previous town hall meetings that we've had for the other regions, also located on the CMP website. The content of each presentation will be the same, but I'll be highlighting the major projects in a different region for each night. So let's take a look at Region 1. As you can see, ESPLAS 1 helped pay for Sequoia Middle School conversion, Sequoia High School previously, Warren Technical School conversion from Warren Elementary, 17 new elementary school gymnasiums. ESPLAS 2 helped pay for Chamblee Middle School, Peachtree Middle School, ESPLAS 3, the new Chamblee High School, Dunwoody Elementary School, Cross Keys High School Edition, Dunwoody High School Edition, ESPLAS 4, Austin Elementary School replacement, and parts of the new Chamblee High School. At ESPLAS 5, and we'll talk about this more, we've already delivered Doraville United Elementary School and John R. Lewis Elementary School. Keep in mind that this is not a full listing. Only some of the major projects, such as new schools and additions, are what we've listed here. As I said before, every single school and building in this district has been improved in part as part of the ESPLAS program. So now let's skip ahead to current projects. What are we working on now? While we are coming to the end of sales tax collections for ESPLAS 5, we are still very much in the middle of construction. Let's once again skip ahead to Region 1. And as I said before, if you're interested in the other regions, I encourage you to go to the CMP webpage and download this presentation, or take a look at the videos that we have already posted of our other regional town hall meetings from earlier in this series. So you can see quite a lot going on in Region 1. We've got Peachtree Middle School. This was minor work that was left over to support the ball fields that came in as part of the city of Dunwoody. Chestnut Elementary and Dresden Elementary are getting HVAC replacement. Kingsley Elementary is also getting HVAC replacement, as well as fire sprinkler installation. Chamblee High School, and you'll see this for all high schools in the district, are getting synthetic turf. And the schools with tracks are getting a track. The former Nancy Creek was getting HVAC replacement and fire sprinkler installation. Doraville United, of course, and John Lewis, new schools. The new Cross Keys High School is the deferred program and deferred project, excuse me. And you'll see that there's several projects, and this is what happened with Peachtree Middle School as well, that were major school additions. And this is something that hit Region 1 particularly, where there were additions at Dunwoody High School, Peachtree Middle School. There was to be a new Cross Keys High School. And when there needed to be a redo of ESPLAS 5, when there were major budget concerns, back in February of 2020, the board approved deferring all of the capacity addition projects in ESPLAS 5. And of course, we'll talk about this much more as we go along. But what this has meant is that the capacity issues that ESPLAS 5 was meant to address are still here and are still now have rolled into the CMP and are a major, major focus of the CMP and the recommendations you'll see coming out. Again, we don't have any recommendations currently. We'll be talking about that at the next series of town hall meetings towards the end of September. So moving on, we've got Carrie Reynolds with a new roof and HVAC replacement and a security vestibule. Ashford Park is a roof replacement, so is Montgomery Elementary. Ashford Park is also getting security vestibule. Chestnut, Sequoia Middle School, Vanderlyn Elementary are all getting security vestibules. Sprinkler installation because the names of the school changed from Kittredge Magnet to now we're calling it former Nancy Creek. We would need to make sure that the title of all the projects line up, but Kittredge Magnet, which refers to, I believe, former Nancy Creek. I'll have to double check. No, actually, that one I think actually is where Kittredge currently is getting sprinkler installation. Margaret Harris Comprehensive School, sprinkler installation, as well as Chestnut Elementary, Huntley Hills Elementary, Montgomery Elementary, Sequoia Middle School, Vanderlyn Elementary, and Woodward Elementary are all getting sprinkler installations. And Dunwoody High School is also getting artificial turf and new track installation. So you can see there's still quite a bit going on in SPLOST 5. So you can see that a few of these projects are at or near completion, the new elementary schools in particular, and we are working to complete the remainder over the next 2 years. And so speaking of completed projects, I'm going to skip past the other regions to take a look at some of what's already been delivered in ESPLAS 5. So you can see that in ESPLAS 5, we've already completed 3 new elementary schools, John Lewis and Doraville United Elementaries, and a replacement Indian Creek Elementary, which just opened this year. We have replaced 19 elementary school playgrounds and have so far completed turf and track replacements at 6 of our high schools, with the rest being completed in the coming months. We have completed plumbing fixture replacements at Bowie Theme Elementary and Oakview Elementary, and have completed perimeter fencing projects at the 24 schools in groups A and B, and there's one more group C with 12 more schools receiving perimeter fencing. So just to give you an idea of what these look like, you can see here the turf and track at Cedar Grove High School and Redan High School, Southwest DeKalb and Arabian Mountain, and these really do look this beautiful. I'm always blown away by these pictures. Indian Creek Elementary, and this is the same design, of course, that we've used at all of our prototype elementary schools, including John Lewis and Doraville United. In fact, you can see here the outside of John Lewis and the foyer of John Lewis. It's just such a beautiful school. And then last but not least, of course, is the new touchless plumbing fixtures that we've installed at Oakview Elementary and Bowie Elementary. And while these may not be as pretty as the previous improvements that you've seen, I assure you that these new fixtures are having a real and positive impact on these schools. These projects are just the beginning of what we are already working on. As you saw earlier, we are still working on dozens of projects that will improve schools across the district. Some are nearing completion, some are still in construction, and some are still being designed. But we expect to have most or all of these projects complete in the next 2 to 3 years. So now that we've talked about what ESPLAS has given us in the past and what we're currently working on, let's take a moment to focus on what we're doing next. Hopefully by now everyone is familiar with the CMP, or Comprehensive Master Plan. This plan will help guide the future of the district's facility improvements, among other things, including making recommendations on what will be included in the next round of ESPLAS funded facility improvements. And this is going to be true of all of our different funding sources, but ESPLAS in particular. So at the moment, the CMP team is working on putting together options and recommendations that will be presented next month at another round of regional town hall meetings. Many of you remember that we have been working on the CMP since the end of last year and had originally hoped to have options ready by the time school let out this past school year. Unfortunately, this timeline slipped into the summer, and with preparation for school start and leadership change in operations, the CMP was more or less put on hold until earlier this month. While we have lost some time, the next round of town hall meetings will put us back on track for completing the CMP, as they will give you the chance to give us your invaluable feedback on the direction of the CMP, which the team will use in drafting the comprehensive master plan. So to give you a more complete timeline of what that looks like, you can see in green the August and September regional town hall meetings. In gray, you can see the development of CMP options for facilities, special programs, redistricting, and prioritization of facility improvements. These are happening right now in preparation for the next round of regional town halls. In blue, you can see the final components of the CMP, the implementation plan, financial analysis, draft project list for ESPLAS 6, and the final draft of the comprehensive master plan. The CMP team is working hard to make up for lost time and complete the CMP this fall as originally planned. So with that, I'm sure there are several questions that have come up that our community has, and I'd like to spend the rest of this time devoted to that, to answering those questions.
Yes, thank you
so much, Mr. Wood.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Superintendent. May I just jump in 1 second? I just want to make sure that that we acknowledge interpretation that we have here. And if you could provide the, if we look in the chat, we notice that there are some Spanish-speaking families here looking for interpretation. So if you could just jump in, ma'am, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Buenas noches a todos. Gracias por acompañarnos. Tenemos servicio de intérprete en varios lenguajes. Si quieren escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor, seleccionen el icono que es en forma de globo al fondo de la pantalla y seleccionen español. Lo van a encontrar ahí al lado donde dice, donde pueden levantar la mano. También le voy a poner en el chat una foto con las instrucciones. Gracias.
And then also, or anyone on the team, if you could link in the chat the Spanish translation of the PowerPoint presentation that we have, so that we can ensure that our families do have access to the information. And then for everyone that's participating, for the questions that are listed in the chat in Spanish, my colleague Anne will ask the question of for the room, and we will ensure that the answer is given both in this main room as well as in the interpretation area as well. Superintendent?
Thank you so much, Ms. Harris, and thank you, Anne, and thank you again to all of our translators that are in community with us this evening. I just wanted to acknowledge that our board chair, Mrs. Vicki B. Turner, is on with us, and we thank her so much for being in community with us this evening, as well as Mrs. Anna Hill is also in community with us. So we just wanted to acknowledge them and thank them both for being with us. Back to you, Ms. Harris.
Thank you, Superintendent. Mrs. Pierce is also in here as well in our virtual town hall room. I know there's so many names listed in there, you may have missed her. So thank you, Mrs. Pierce, for being here yet again for another town hall. And so we're going to jump into the questions. We have questions here in the chat. We also received some questions via email. And so what I'll do is toggle back and forth between the questions that are here in the chat, as well as the questions that we received in advance. Just going through, and for anyone that this is your first time here, just know that I actually do read your comments out loud, and I do answer, but as I go back and forth, sometimes I lose my place. But here we go. So the first question / statement. It is a given that we need more high school seats on the north side of the county, specifically in the perimeter area. Since perimeter is also connected to MARTA and the BART system, this is a unique opportunity to create a school choice high school that will appeal to students from across the county and alleviate the emergency level overcrowding at Dunwoody High, a vocational magnet school that operates with support of influential local employers and is aligned with sector forecasts for sustained job growth in Metro Atlanta, such as tech, computer science, or health sciences would be ideal. Gwinnett already has implemented such a concept very successfully. I can already just let you know that Dr. Constance Stevenson is probably somewhere jumping up and down as I read this question out loud. Mr. Williams, would you like to respond, sir?
Sure. Again, so we don't have any specifics as far as what exactly the options or recommendations might be that we're going to be discussing next at the next series of town hall meetings, but looking at special programs and different options for the district, and how can special programs bolster what's already happening in our district, both in, how can it affect positively some of the challenges that the district has, and then also provide more better opportunities for our students is absolutely something that we're looking at. So this is right in line with the kinds of things that we want to be talking about as part of the CMP.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. And there's another question that's related that's in the chat. I'm just going to read it out, even though I think that you addressed at least where we are in the big picture. There's commercial space in the perimeter area. It's cheap. It's the cheapest it's going to be for a very long time due to the pandemic. Is the district in the process of acquiring a property for a school choice high school in the perimeter Dunwoody area?
Again, there's no specifics that we have to talk about this evening as far as what options or recommendations that we're going to be talking about at the next series of town halls. But as part of discussions going into that, we have looked at many different options as far as how, obviously there is a need for additional capacity, especially up in Region 1. That was something that was identified especially for ESPLAS 5 back in 2015-16, I think even to a certain extent back in 2010. And so that's absolutely something that the CMP is looking at. How do we address that? What are the different ways of providing that? So yes.
Thank you, sir. There are large developments that have been announced or under construction in Region 1. One for 800 residences in Chamblee was reported in the AJC today. How is the district accounting for students from those developments and its population projections?
So we keep very close track of the various developments, both in the planning phase and then especially once they go to either the county or the local governments for some sort of permits. We work with the county, we work with the local governments on potential school impacts. So we follow those developments very closely and factor that into our forecast of students. And as part of that, we look at what have other similar developments either in the area or in the district yielded as far as students, both when they first opened, but then over time. And then we apply that to projections of how many units of a particular development. If it's an apartment complex, you get a lot of units coming online at the same time. If it's a condo townhome, they'll be built up over time, depending on how hot the market is and how quickly those units are being developed. And then similar things with large single family house developments. We see those most typically in the southeast part of the county, but that is still all the different types of housing development in the district. We track and fold into our forecasts by projecting out when will units be available, what is the expected yield of students, and then also what is the distribution of that yield coming into neighborhood schools versus other schools, taking advantage of school choice programs. Because, as I've said many times, within this district, 1 out of every 5 students attends a school that is not their neighborhood school. And so we take that into account, especially with schools like, Oak Cliff Theme and, the Chamblee Magnet program, and just recognizing what is the impact of this, not just for the neighborhood school, but all of the schools in the district.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. There was a question that we received via email earlier today. I have 4 daughters who finished the Sequoia Middle School. And why are there so many chairlers? They should expand the school or do something about the overcrowding. Right now, the pandemic is making things worse. What are your plans what are the district plans for the Sequoia Middle School?
So this is the one where it pains me to say we don't have specifics, but I can say that Sequoia Middle School and overcrowding in the Cross Keys cluster is absolutely something that the CMP is looking at. So while I'm not going to say anything specifically, there will be recommendations that directly affect Sequoia and directly address the overcrowding at Sequoia. Sequoia has, especially now with the opening of John Lewis and Duroville United, Sequoia has more trailers than any other school in our district. So it's, and the only one that would be close would be Dunwoody High School, also in Region 1. So looking at the overcrowding in Region 1, especially at schools like Sequoia, especially at schools like Dunwoody High School, where we have this high concentration of portable classrooms, is absolutely going to be part of the recommendations and options coming out of the CMP that we're going to be discussing at the next round of town hall meetings.
Thank you. SPLAS 5 is only 31% complete. How will you finish the remainder of projects in 2 years?
A lot of the projects that remain are projects like a roof replacement, HVAC replacement, and we talk about this. In fact, we had multiple meetings on this over the past, this is Tuesday, so the past 2 days even, saying, making sure that when we say we plan to finish these projects over the next 2 to 3 years, that we meet it, that we'll be able to deliver on that promise. And a big part of that is when the board decided to shift a lot of the big capacity projects out from SPLAS 5 and defer them to SPLAS 6 or whatever recommendations come out of the CMP, then what remained were sprinkler installations, HVAC installations, roof installations, plumbing fixture replacement, things that are still quite big and have a large impact on the school, but are not a build a brand new school over 2 years projects. And so that's what we're looking at, is trying to accomplish many slightly smaller projects all at around the same time. And that's something that we think we can do. That's why we've been saying over and over again at all these meetings, we plan to finish all of the projects over the next 2 to 3 years.
Hans, I was going to add also that if you look in the monthly status report, the last one being period ending July 31st, 2021, if you look at table 5 on page 7, we're showing $159 million worth of projects that are either in design or design procurement. Then there's another $18.5 million worth of projects that are in construction procurement. So a lot of that work is in the pipeline now, and will be starting construction later in the school year.
Thank you so much. So both in English and Spanish, we have questions regarding Cross Keys High School. Can we have an update about the rebuild of Cross Keys High School? My understanding is that it was approved under the last SPLAS, but then the money was reallocated before any construction began. Will that be a priority before awarding new SPLAS funds?
So yes, the new Cross Keys High School was one of the major projects, the new capacity projects that was deferred from ESPLAS 5 to ESPLAS 6 and whatever recommendations come out of the CMP. And what that means is it is one of the projects that are a top priority for the CMP, addressing the overcrowding in Region 1 and throughout the district really is a big priority of the comprehensive master plan. And yes, recognizing that Cross Keys High School has honestly been passed over a few times, and the new Cross Keys High School was supposed to be a fulfillment of that promise, and then it itself was deferred, and that's not lost. So there, just like I can say, I don't have any specifics as far as what recommendations there will be, but just like I can say, you will see something that will directly address Sequoia, you will see something that directly addresses Cross Keys as well.
Thank you so much. How does the district decide which schools receive priority? It seems like schools are being improved in multiple areas while other schools are being left behind.
So there's two answers to that. One is, how do we look at prioritization? How has prioritization happened for the projects that we're currently working on? Because that's really what people see. I mean, that's what we've spent so much of this presentation talking about. What has already been delivered and what are we currently working on? And there, unfortunately, the answer is the projects of the present are the priorities of the past, or the priorities of 5 years ago. So in many cases, those are still priorities. Those schools still need roofs, still need HVAC, still need plumbing fixture replacement, or whatever the case may be. But it also means that while right now there is a very clear focus on the need for facility improvements, new roofs, new HVAC, really basic fundamental improvements to major building systems, there wasn't that focus 5 years ago when ESPLAS 5 was originally being planned and when the project list was originally approved by the board. There was, of course, some focus. That's why we have the projects that we currently do. but it wasn't the same prioritization that we're looking at today. And so the second part of the question is, well, what is the prioritization of today, and what will that mean moving forward? Right now, the two major sources of information that we use in prioritization is the facility condition assessments that were done earlier this year, and then also very much so talking to our regional maintenance supervisors, the folks who are actually on the ground fixing our schools every day. The FCAs, the facility condition assessment, is really a snapshot. I mean, the folks who went out and did it are professionals, engineers, architects, but really all they can give us is, this is what the condition of this roof was on the day. This is what the condition of your HVAC was on the day. Unless that day happened to be raining, they might not see all the leaks. They, of course, do talk to principals and regional maintenance supervisors themselves, but it's still fundamentally a snapshot of, here's what we've seen. And so we talk to, that's why we put so much emphasis on talking to our maintenance staff, especially the regional maintenance supervisors who are responsible for these buildings. They're the ones that, when there are work orders to fix an HVAC system, to fix a roof leak, they're the ones that go out and make sure it happens and then it gets done. And so those are the folks that we go to and say, yes, we can see here are all of our roofs that are old and might need to be replaced. What are your priorities, so that we can factor that in? And those are the two main sources. So that coming out of the CMP, what we plan to have is a prioritization of all the facility improvement needs. So it will include roofs, HVACs, plumbing fixture replacement, major building systems, of course, but really everything, all of the different facility needs of the district and the facility improvement needs of the district, so that for ESPLAS 6 that we've talked about, but also the CARES Act funds. Also, really any funding sources where funds become available, we're not going out and saying, okay, well, what do we do now? It's, we have the prioritized list, we go down the list. This is the next unfunded project, we go to that. This is the next unfunded project, so on and so forth.
Thank you so much, sir. What thought has the CMP team given to reserving some ESPLAS 5 funds to supplement funds needed to address the severe overcrowding in Region 1 middle schools and high schools?
So it's difficult to look at specific funding sources, especially as we look at ESPLAS 5 and CARES Act funds, which are, we're looking at kind of right now in parallel with recommendations coming out of the CMP, which will mostly be addressed through ESPLAS 6. But at the same time, there is that recognition that, if there is any way to fold in some of the needs that we see, especially any major recommendations to ESPLAS 5 or even CARES Act, schools that really are in need of HVAC replacement or roof, not to wait for ESPLAS 6, to put to fund them through more immediate sources that we currently already have access to. Now, that being said, I think it's important to remember that with a lot of these projects, there is still a lag between seeing a need now and then getting it funded, and then getting it designed and getting construction started before you finally see completion and delivery of that project. And what that means is, for some ESPLAS projects, especially ESPLAS 6 projects, there isn't a whole lot of difference. It's a difference of a few months, really, between, if we're going to build a brand new school, for example, if we were to, the time it would take to allocate funds in ESPLAS 5, make sure the board approves the change of those funds, then bring an architect on board, get that designed, get a general contractor, begin construction, and get that delivered, would not be significantly different between funding in ESPLAS 5 or funding in ESPLAS 6. Because ESPLAS 6, remember, collections begin, hopefully, if approved by DeKalb County voters in November, collections will begin in this coming July. So we're not that far away. So the short answer after all of that is to say, yes, we have looked at that. And yes, I think that will be something that will be part of facility improvements. How are we going to fund these projects in our plan moving forward?
Thank you so much, sir. I'm smiling because we talked a lot about this last night. Why are some schools getting security vestibules, but not all?
So security vestibules goes back to what I was saying before, as far as the projects of today are the priorities of yesterday. Security vestibules were, there were many more security concerns about, especially for some of our older schools, the way that they're designed. Once you get in the front door, now all of our schools have locking doors, you have to be buzzed in by a receptionist, but once that happens, a lot of our older schools, the way they're designed is once you get in the front door, you pretty much have access to the whole school. You can just go straight down the hallways to a classroom. And so back at the beginning, when ESPLAS 5 was being planned, there was security concerns that maybe this wasn't something that schools wanted, that they wanted some sort of secondary set of doors. That's how we're looking at, how we're designing a lot of these security vestibules, is a secondary set of doors that in most cases will funnel folks to the office. There's locked doors that can be opened when there's a need to exit the school quickly, or opened if there's, when school's being let in and a lot of folks need to be able to get through it at one time. But during visiting hours, when school's in session, folks will be buzzed in through the front door and then kind of be funneled to the office to sign in before they then have access to the whole rest of the school. So it's just a secondary layer of security there. And what schools were chosen had a lot to do with what were the priorities of those schools and those communities at the time that ESPLAS 5 was being planned in 2015 and 2016. So I honestly don't have a logical, this was the exact criteria used to decide which schools got security vestibules. I think it was down to the priorities of the community and of the school at the time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. A question from our board member, Anna Hill. Community members have asked how their school can be considered for a new playground. A playground was not mentioned in the FCA or ESA, but it's been decades since it was replaced.
My understanding, so there are components of the ESA, education suitability analysis, that do talk about playgrounds, play fields outside, but it's true, there isn't anything that specifically calls out playground. That being said, I know that the condition of our playgrounds is something that we keep track of and are aware of. You saw that as part of ESPLAS 5 that we delivered, I believe it was 19 playgrounds.
19, yes.
Yeah, 19 new playgrounds. So it is something that we're aware of, that we're keeping track of, and that we are folding into and keep, it'll be one of the things that is listed as part of the prioritization of facility improvements. Was there anything more that you wanted to say, Richard, about that?
Yeah, our vendor, our playground vendor, actually has done an analysis of the different playgrounds, and those 19 that were replaced were some of the older ones. There are still others that we can continue to work with, but we do have, just like Hans was saying, prioritization of some of the other pieces of work. We do have prioritization for the playgrounds as well, that we can go to the next level to select more playgrounds.
Mm-hmm. I want to lift up for both of you and for all of the, for everyone that's here, there is a lot of conversation right now in the chat regarding playgrounds and the conditions of playgrounds. And so I know that we do have operations staff that's also monitoring the chat, but lifting up again that this does appear to be a very large concern for our Region 1 community. Additionally, there is a question around, hold on everyone, it's hard curating all of these through a little tiny screen, but there was a great question around how can people continue to be able to lift up their recommendations and their questions. And so I know that there is a CMP email address. Mr. Williams, would you be able to share that? And I'm certain that someone will put that in the chat as well for how our community can continue to lift up these really important concerns.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the CMP email address is CMP, the letters CMP, at DeKalbSchoolsGA.org. And we're also working on a more general community feedback survey that we're going to be posting on the CMP webpage by the end of this week, hopefully here in the next couple of days. That will also ask very general questions about, share us your opinion or comments on, either the CMP, on the facility condition assessments, or whatever it is that you're very interested in. So those, I think, are the two best ways. For the moment, the email is the best way. We keep track of that. We look at that every day. That's cmp@DeKalbSchoolsGA.org. And then, as I said, by the end of this week, we'll have a more general feedback survey up on the webpage as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir. And speaking of the email, we received many emails, but these two are connected. Will redistricting with geographic proximity to schools be considered or be pursued in time for 22-23 school year to relieve the serious overcrowding, especially within the Dunwoody High School and Peachtree Middle School areas of Region 1? Are there any potential plans of building additional high school in Region 1 to relieve the overcrowding? But then noting that there's another comment that came in that says, how will the CMP address overcrowding in Region 1? Will a quick low-cost solution like redistricting be considered, or a longer high-cost solution like building new schools be considered? Everyone, I'm just reading the question as it is. And so know that I'm not, going anywhere the other, just reading what was written. Mr. Williams, could you address redistricting and again, how we're looking at overcrowding in Region 1? Sure.
So redistricting will absolutely be a part of what we discuss at the next round of town hall meetings at the end of September. And we are looking at redistricting, as the way I've put it, is in almost three different timeframes. One is the short term, which is this upcoming school year. There are schools that are either where redistricting should be considered. That doesn't necessarily guarantee that there will be redistricting, of course, but there are areas that we could redistrict next year, and that would either provide some sort of immediate benefit, or there's an outstanding needs, schools that are very empty, or whatever the case is, where redistricting will be part of that conversation. Then there's the medium term, which is I think the much more this is the more comprehensive, what will the district look like moving forward sort of redistricting, because that's looking at the 2 to 5 years. So same time period that any sort of new construction recommendations that are going to be coming out of the CMP will be delivered. Many of them, I should say. It's a 10-year plan that we're looking at. So some things will be happening in that 5-year period, some things in the 5 to 10-year period. But a lot of the new construction, especially that would be coming out of ESPLAS 6, would be delivered in that 2 to 5 year time period. And so there will be redistricting around that, and to realign the district with the goals and vision of the CMP. And then, of course, the long term, the 5 to 10 year, that will go with the remaining new facilities and the remaining work and recommendations coming out of ESPLAS, out of the CMP, that we'll be talking about at the next round of town halls. So short answer there is yes, I think redistricting for next year will be part of the conversation, but whether it's 1 or 2 spot redistrictings or a much broader redistricting that could affect many more areas is part of the conversation. That's something that we'll be talking about. As far as strategies to address overcrowding in Region 1, I think the answer is yes to redistricting, but also yes to new facilities, new capacity. Region 1, the overcrowding that we're seeing in the northern part of the district is not something that has an easy, low-cost solution. If that were the case, I think we'd see a lot more of that. There would have been a lot more concrete recommendations already have been floating around. Redistricting absolutely has to be a part of it, but I think new capacity also has to be a part of it. The going just south of Region 1 in the Lakeside cluster is itself overcrowded. Tucker High School is at capacity or slightly overcrowded. Druid Hills High School doesn't have a whole lot of spare capacity either. So while I think that there are opportunities for redistricting, and you'll see that, that redistricting in the entire district, not just Region 1, but redistricting will be a part of what is talked about at the next town halls. You'll also see new capacity. You'll also see building new schools, additions, or whatever is necessary to address that overcrowding in addition to redistricting.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay, how do you define equity? The district uses that word a lot, but what does it mean? How is it equitable that Sequoia students are in so many trailers without cover? Or Dunwoody High School students are stuffed into hallways and pushed into the 7A column with the same athletics funding as the 3A schools?
I can answer that, Mr. Williams, and to Ms. Harris, and I appreciate the question. You're absolutely correct that it's a word that we used often, and it's called out in our 2019-2024 strategic plan. It's the first key goal area, equity and access. And how we define equity is that doesn't mean that everyone gets the same thing, but that all of our scholars receive exactly what they need in order to reach their preferred future. We're absolutely aware that overcrowding is a problem, specifically in Region 1. And while I was not the superintendent at the time when it was decided that we would do a comprehensive master plan, I absolutely agree with it. And what was behind the decision to do a complete and comprehensive master plan was that we could have an equity lens rather than just addressing one problem at a time. And so as Mr. Williams shared, and I think that there were several other questions that were posed to us, we know that overcrowding is a problem in Region 1. We also know that we have a lot of underutilized buildings. We also know that some students have access to some of the innovative and robust programs that we spoke about, and that maybe other students don't have as much access to those programs. So we're looking at this comprehensive master plan as an opportunity to right-size some things and make sure that we don't have as many children in overcrowded buildings, that we are looking at what communities want and improving the quality of all of our programs so that we can reduce the number of underutilized buildings. But that's what equity means. And I applaud the system for the bold statements that are made in our strategic plan that we do believe in equity and access for all. And when we have an opportunity to present the recommendations, a lot of what has been discussed tonight, you will see in the recommendations. And we will continue to engage our larger community so that we have an opportunity for you to really kind of get, be socialized, if you will, with the recommendations and continue to give input and feedback so that we do have equity of voice as well from our stakeholders and our parents, and that everyone, tonight is a good example, having interpreters so that we can have, an equitable conversation about what the questions that you have and your hopes and dreams for the CMP. So that's a quick answer, or maybe a little long-winded answer, but it's something that we will continue to talk about because I think that first key goal area, equity and access, really do represent the values of so many people in our larger community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. We have another question. Community members have asked, this question is from Board Member Hill. Community members have asked me how they can feel comfortable their input matters. For example, on the 4/19/21 agenda item G9F4 was a new ESPLAS 5 project for swing space at Green Forest. The song space was for schools undergoing a major capital improvement project. Community members are concerned this swing space is for CMP projects already planned for prior to their input. Could you give us more information about that?
Sure. So Green Forest Drive, which is the former Wadsworth Elementary, is a school that we've already used for swing space. That is for when Rockbridge Elementary was being rebuilt. It was used as swing space. This is my daughter, she says hi. It was used as swing space for that school when it was being rebuilt. In between when Rockbridge Elementary was built and about a year ago, the facility unfortunately was highly vandalized. And so when we looked at needing swing space, in this case for E.L. Miller, there's a large HVAC replacement project that's coming in that will highly impact the ability of that school to operate while work is ongoing. And unfortunately, that work is intrusive enough that it's going to take more than one summer or 2 summers in a row to complete. So we determined the best option for that school was to swing the school, to put it in a different facility for at least 1 semester. And that at the time, the only available facility was Green Forest Drive, but it being highly vandalized, it needed to be fixed up. Hence, creating a project that to fix up that facility, first for E.L. Miller, but then also recognizing that, yes, we do expect Green Forest Drive to be used for CMP projects, but we don't know what those projects are. We just know that there are needs in the district that the CMP will address, that where those schools will end up going to Green Forest Drive in the future, but which is why we're willing, and we recommended spending millions of dollars to fix up this facility to get it ready to back to swing space, because it's not just one school. The immediate school is of course E.L. Miller. There are other schools in ESPLAS 5 that are getting major HVAC replacements, and each school is a bit different as far as what that means for the facility. But there are other schools where there's a possibility we would want to swing them in right after E.L. Miller. But we recognize it was worth putting the money into that facility for the long term. But that doesn't mean we know what those projects will be. It could be any of the schools in that part of the district that would need that swing space, whether it be for building a new school or more invasive projects like major HVAC replacement, or if we're doing so much work, it's usually more than just HVAC, then that it tears up the school, makes it impossible to use. That's when you might need swing space. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I will lift up this one last question here before we end at least tonight's regional town hall. And the question is from Mr. Smith. This is my first CMP meeting, so I apologize if this has been addressed. As a PAC member, a CMP is important to the long-term sustainability of our campuses. However, it's become apparent to me that there are some problems with our current CMP process, primarily the assessment process. How does the district feel about the current process, and are they interested in improving it? Is the board open to sitting down with parents and stakeholders to discuss how to improve the process? Well, I can jump in and definitely say yes, yes, and yes. The way how we understand things and how we look at everything is that there's always room for improvement. And a couple of months ago, the community came forward and said, we need to see a little bit more community engagement and involvement. And there are issues with numbers and the assessments and so forth. And we went and we took another look at it. And we recognized that over the last couple of months, we've been a little bit quiet. And much of what you didn't see in front of the scenes, but what was going on behind the scenes was just a realignment so that we can do things better. As it relates to receiving feedback and improving the process, we look forward to being able to sit down with our PAC members to talk about the current CMP process, to talk about the future, to talk about improvements. In fact, PAC members will be receiving communication from us this week around setting up meetings to come out and talk to you more about the facilities assessments, talk to you about the CMP process, and of course, to gather your feedback. So I'm just jumping in here, one, as someone who works closely with PACs and also works closely with family and community empowerment, to say yes, yes, yes. Your voice is definitely welcome in a process. And I'm certain that between me, your regional superintendent, our planning team, we would definitely love to receive your feedback so that we can be in constant improvement. Superintendent or Mr. Williams, did you have anything to add?
I think you said it perfectly.
Good. Yeah, so I just want to conclude again by thanking our team that has been on all of these town halls. Thank you to Mr. Hans, and I'm sure his little one has missed her dad during this kind of special time each evening. So we thank you, Mr. Hans Williams, for being such a great spokesperson for the work done to date. And sharing some of your family time with us. We want to thank all of the community members who have attended not only this town hall, but all of the previous ones in the series. And I see a lot of great questions still coming in. There was a parent, I just lost your name, who asked about special education assignments. Please know that we are reading through all of these comments and we are going to respond to them, even if we don't have the answer right now. I think something that we have to acknowledge as a system is that we have so many things to be proud of in the DeKalb County School District. And then we also have to acknowledge that there's some things that haven't been working exactly the way we want them to be working for a long time. And so a process such as the CMP, which has had its bumps in the road, but it's a process of growth and development that we're learning even more about our system during this process. And what we can commit to is continuing to come back to the table. So I really do appreciate that last question that Ms. Harris answered. The only way we're going to continue to learn what's working well and where we need to improve is by continuing to have these conversations and making every commitment to do what we can to fix what is fixable immediately, and then to create the right structures and systems and foundations so that the things that haven't worked can start to work. But it's going to take time for those two things to line up. And so I just appreciate the 100 and I think we had 22 people that joined us this evening because you've come to the meeting because you have some hope that things will be different as a result of your presence, as a result of the questions that you ask, and the ways that you will hold us accountable. So again, we're not where we need to be, but we're moving in the right direction, and we're doing so not in a polyanderish way, but in a way that we hope is strategic and will continue to propel us forward. So I just want to thank everyone for this first series of town halls. Thank you for telling us what has gone well. Thank you for telling us your concerns. And thank you for telling us what hasn't worked well. All of these things we take as valuable feedback, and it's our responsibility to do something about it. So we will continue to work to gain your public trust. We will continue to work to make sure that we are creating spaces for equitable conversations and to be the best advocates that we can be for all of our scholars. So I just appreciate you. I hope you have a safe evening. And we look forward to the next round of town halls with the recommendations. So I expect those will be healthy, exciting conversations, but we look forward to the dialogue. So much appreciated, everyone. Thank you again to our board members, Madam Chair Turner, Mrs. Hill, Mrs. Pierce, who's been at many. Just thank you so much for your support, and we look forward to the future ahead. Thank you and have a good evening.